There comes a time in every woman's life when social masks begin to slip, conventions lose their magnetic force, and an uncomfortable truth emerges from the depths. After the age of 60, the world expects you to quietly disappear, to accept being treated as a shadow of your former self. But what if I told you there is a hidden power in words? 3 specific phrases that act as master keys, capable of completely rewriting the way you are seen, heard, and respected. For decades, you may have believed that age was your enemy, that gray hair was synonymous with irrelevance, that wrinkles were a sign not only of time, but also of diminished social value. This is the cruelest lie our society whispers in women's ears, that there is an expiration date on your intelligence, your sensuality, your right to occupy space and command respect. But there is something they don't want you to discover, something that could change everything. The truth is that women over 60 possess an emotional and intellectual arsenal that younger women are still building. You carry decades of experience, scars that have turned into wisdom, and a mental clarity that cuts through illusions like a sharp blade. So why do you still allow others to define your worth? Why do you still seek approval from eyes that have already decided to underestimate you before they even know the depth of what you have to offer? There is a science behind the words we choose, a verbal alchemy that can instantly transform perceptions, that can make people reconsider their first impressions and recognize the authority that emanates from you. These are phrases that don't ask for permission, that don't apologize for existing, that establish invisible boundaries and create an aura of respect that becomes impossible to ignore. But these words need to be chosen with surgical precision, spoken at the exact moment, charged with the energy of someone who knows their own worth. What you're about to discover isn't just 3 sentences, it's 3 portals to a new version of yourself. A version that doesn't accept crumbs of attention, that doesn't settle for condescending smiles, that doesn't allow your age to be used as an excuse to be treated as invisible. You're seconds away from discovering the secret code that transforms mature women into forces of nature, respected not out of pity, but out of genuine reverence. The question that echoes now is, are you ready to take on that power? The first truth that needs to resonate in your mind is this: words are not just sounds that escape our lips. They are invisible architectures that construct realities, bridges that connect our inner essence with the outside world, and tools of power that can completely rewrite the way we are perceived. For decades, you may have used words as apologies, as shy whispers seeking approval, as survival mechanisms in a world that has taught you to be small. But there comes a time in life when this dynamic needs to be broken, and that time is now. When a woman over 60 masters the art of speaking with authority, she is not just communicating ideas, she is claiming her space in the world, establishing invisible boundaries and creating an aura of respect that becomes magnetic. The power of the right words at the right time can transform an entire room, can make people reconsider their biases and recognize the strength that emanates from you. But here's the secret that no one has told you. It's not just about what you say, but how you say it, the timing you choose, the energy you carry in each syllable. There is a huge difference between a woman who speaks asking for permission to exist and a woman who speaks knowing exactly who she is and the value she brings to any situation. When you master this difference, when you incorporate this transformation into your communicative DNA, something extraordinary happens. People start listening to you before you even open your mouth. It's as if a different energy emanates from your presence, a silent authority that communicates competence, wisdom, and unshakable confidence. The 3 phrases you're about to discover are not magical in and of themselves. They become powerful when spoken by a woman who has decided to stop apologizing for taking up space in the world. Each word needs to be imbued with the certainty that you belong in any conversation, in any environment, in any important decision that is being made. The interesting thing is that many women spend their entire lives believing that they need to be taller, younger, more conventionally attractive in order to be respected, when in fact genuine respect comes from something much deeper and inaccessible to those who judge on the surface. There is a special strength that emerges when you choose and practice the freedom to be the woman you want to be, without having to prove anything to anyone. This strength cannot be bought. It cannot be imitated. It cannot be faked. It is built through years of experience, through scars that have turned into wisdom, through battles that have shaped your character. When a mature woman speaks with this energy, She is not just sharing an opinion. She is offering a perspective filtered by decades of experience, tempered by a deep understanding of how the world works, refined by the ability to see beyond appearances. It is impossible to ignore someone who speaks from this place of inner power. The resistance you may feel right now is no accident. It's the echo of years of being conditioned to be too polite, too understanding, too small. Every time you bit back a sharp retort, every time you smiled when you should have been confrontational, every time you allowed yourself to be interrupted or ignored, you were feeding a pattern that now needs to be consciously undone. Real transformation begins when you recognize that this resistance is just fear in disguise. Fear of being judged, fear of being rejected, fear of discovering how powerful you really are. But here's a liberating truth. You've survived so much, overcome so many challenges, proven yourself in so many ways that the judgment of strangers becomes irrelevant compared to the approval you can give yourself. When this realization settles deep into your consciousness, when you truly embody this truth within yourself, the words you choose to use begin to reflect this new inner reality. The first portal of transformation opens when you learn to say, with a calmness that disarms any resistance, "I disagree, and I will explain why." This phrase may seem simple on the surface, but it carries within it a silent revolution. It breaks the feminine pattern of seeking consensus at all costs, of avoiding conflict even when it means giving up one's own opinion, of prioritizing superficial harmony over personal truth. When a woman in her 60s utters these words, she is communicating something much deeper than disagreement. She is establishing that her perspective has value, that her experience deserves to be heard, that she will no longer pretend to agree in order to keep the peace. The beauty of this phrase is in its elegance. It is not aggressive, it is not disrespectful, but it is absolutely firm. It creates a space for you to present your view without asking permission, without apologizing, without minimizing the importance of what you have to say. It is a declaration of intellectual independence that many women take decades to be able to pronounce with conviction. The transformative power of this first sentence lies in the fact that it trains both the speaker and the listener for a new relational dynamic. When you stop automatically agreeing, when you stop swallowing your true opinions, you force the people around you to deal with you as a full human being, with complex thoughts and valuable perspectives. This may feel uncomfortable at first. Some people are so used to women who always give in that they are confused when they meet one who doesn't. But this discomfort is temporary, and the respect that emerges from it is lasting. Each time you use this phrase, you are rewriting invisible social contracts, redefining how you expect to be treated, building a reputation as someone who thinks for herself and isn't afraid to speak her mind. Consciously repeating this action creates a transformation that goes far beyond words. It changes your body posture, your tone of voice, the energy you project into the world. But mastering that first sentence is just the beginning of the journey. There's something even more profound happening when you give yourself permission to disagree publicly. You're breaking away from decades of social conditioning that has taught women to be universally agreeable, to prioritize group harmony over their own convictions, to measure their worth by their ability to make others feel comfortable. A woman's bravest act is to think for herself out loud, and that becomes even more revolutionary when it's uttered by someone society expects to be invisible. When you give yourself permission to disagree, you're giving yourself permission to exist fully, to take up intellectual space, to be seen as a whole person with valid opinions and unique perspectives. This isn't just a change in behavior, it's a personal revolution that completely redefines how you engage with the world. It's interesting to see how people react when they encounter a mature woman who doesn't seek approval for her opinions. Initially, there may be surprise, even resistance. After all, they're used to a different standard. But that surprise quickly turns into something much more valuable: genuine respect. When you consistently demonstrate that you have well-founded opinions and aren't afraid to express them, you force people to take you seriously. They begin to seek out your input, to value your perspective, to recognize that you bring something unique to any conversation. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but each time you choose authenticity over conformity, you're building a reputation for integrity and strength that becomes impossible to ignore. The first sentence, then, is a training for both you and the world, for how you expect to be treated from now on. The second key to respect is the ability to set boundaries with absolute elegance, and it is embodied in this transformative phrase: "This doesn't work for me. Let's find another solution." These words carry an emotional sophistication that goes far beyond simple refusal. They demonstrate that you are not being difficult on a whim, but that you have clear standards for how you want to be treated and are willing to work collaboratively to find alternatives that respect those standards. When a woman over 60 utters this phrase, she is communicating a powerful message. She knows her worth, understands her needs, and will not accept situations that diminish or disrespect her, but is open to dialogue and building solutions. This approach is particularly effective because it disarms resistance. It is difficult to argue with someone who is being reasonable and proactive, even when she is setting firm boundaries. What makes this second phrase so powerful is its ability to reject without rejecting the person, to say no without creating hostility, to set boundaries without building walls. Many women struggle with extremes, either accepting everything to avoid conflict or rejecting so abruptly that it creates unnecessary tension. This phrase offers a graceful middle ground that preserves relationships while protecting your dignity. When you master this art, you discover that you can navigate complex situations while keeping your integrity intact. People begin to see that you are someone who thinks before agreeing, who carefully evaluates proposals, who has clear criteria for your decisions. This perception automatically elevates how you are perceived, from someone who always says yes to someone whose yes has real value because it doesn't come automatically. The genius of this approach is that it shifts you from being passive to active in the relationship dynamic. Instead of simply accepting or rejecting what is offered to you, you become a co-creator of solutions. This positions you as a strategic thinker who considers multiple perspectives and is committed to positive outcomes for all involved. When people see that you approach situations with this maturity and sophistication, they naturally begin to treat you with more respect. They know that you won't create unnecessary drama, but you won't accept anything either. This respectful predictability creates a solid foundation for more balanced and mutually beneficial relationships. Consistently practicing this second phrase has a transformative effect on how you see yourself and how the world sees you. Each time you use it, you are strengthening your capacity for graceful self-defense, building emotional muscles that make it easier to maintain your standards without feeling guilty or aggressive. Over time, this approach becomes so natural that you don't even have to think about the words. They flow automatically when needed. And here's the most revolutionary aspect. When you stop accepting things that don't work for you, you create space for better things to enter your life. Relationships improve because they are based on genuine mutual respect. Opportunities expand because you are seen as someone who brings real value to situations. Your self-esteem grows because you are living according to your values instead of betraying them for social convenience. The third and most profound portal of transformation opens when you learn to communicate your experience as the valuable asset it truly is, through this phrase that resonates with unquestionable authority. In my experience, it works differently. These words carry the weight of decades of life, of lessons learned through trial and error, of wisdom distilled through countless situations that have tested your ability to navigate life's complexity. When a strong, wise woman utters this phrase, she is not simply offering an opinion. She is sharing real-world, life-validated knowledge, perspectives that have been tempered by experience and refined by reflection. In a culture that often values newness over wisdom, this phrase repositions your age from a disadvantage to an advantage, transforming each year of your life into a credential of authority. The revolutionary beauty of this third sentence is how it completely flips the narrative around female aging. Instead of apologizing for having more years, you're celebrating what those years have brought you. Instead of trying to compete with youth on its own turf, you're establishing a different territory where your experience is the most valuable asset. When you speak from this place of lived authority, you force people to recognize that there's a kind of intelligence that can only be acquired through time, a kind of perspective that only emerges after decades of observing human patterns, testing strategies, learning from consequences. This isn't theoretical wisdom. It's practical knowledge that's been validated by real experience. What happens when you start using this phrase consistently is fascinating to watch. People start to seek your opinion before making important decisions. They recognize that you've faced similar situations before and can offer insights they don't yet have. Your age stops being something you try to disguise and becomes something you proudly present as evidence of your qualifications to speak on certain topics. In meetings, family conversations, social discussions, your voice takes on a different weight when people know you're speaking from real experience, not just theory or superficial opinion. It takes a lot of courage to face the world as a woman, and when you speak from that time-tested courage, your voice resonates with an authority that cannot be questioned or diminished. The most profound transformation this third sentence brings about is internal. It fundamentally changes how you see yourself and how you value your own journey. For years, you may have looked at your experiences as baggage, as things that made you less desirable or relevant. But when you begin to see each challenge overcome, each lesson learned, each scar transformed into wisdom as part of an invisible resume that qualifies you to speak with authority, a profound transformation takes place in your self-image. You stop apologizing for having lived so long and start celebrating the richness of perspective it has brought you. This internal shift is reflected in your posture, your tone of voice, the confidence with which you move through the world. The combined power of these three phrases creates a transformational alchemy that goes far beyond communication. They completely reconstruct how you inhabit the world and how the world responds to your presence. When you master the art of disagreeing gracefully, setting boundaries collaboratively, and communicating expertise as authority, you're not just changing words, you're changing energies, dynamics, expectations. People begin to anticipate that you'll bring valuable perspectives to any situation. They know that you won't just agree to keep the peace, that you have standards that respect their dignity, that you speak from a place of real knowledge validated by life. This combination creates a presence that's impossible to ignore, an authority that emerges not from titles or positions, but from how you choose to show up in the world. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to demonstrate that you are a force to be reckoned with, not out of arrogance, but out of deep authenticity and earned wisdom. And now you carry with you three keys that can completely rewrite the narrative of your coming years. Three phrases that are not just words, but declarations of emotional independence, silent manifestos of a woman who has decided to stop asking permission to fully exist. Each time you utter them, something changes not only in the environment around you, but in the deepest layers of your own identity. You are not only learning new ways of communicating, you are reclaiming parts of yourself that have been silenced, suppressed, dormant by decades of social conditioning. There is something profoundly revolutionary about a mature woman choosing to speak with authority. It is as if she is reclaiming not only her right to be heard, but her right to occupy emotional and intellectual space in a world that has tried to convince her that her relevance has an expiration date. What you'll experience in the coming days, the coming weeks, the coming conversations, will be a transformation that goes far beyond the words you choose to use. When you begin to disagree gracefully, set boundaries with sophistication, and communicate expertise as an authority, you'll find your entire presence shifting. There's a different energy that emanates from a woman who knows her worth and isn't afraid to show it, a quiet magnetism that attracts genuine respect, that makes people reconsider their automatic assumptions about age and relevance. You may find that conversations linger when you're present, that your opinion is sought more often, that a respectful silence settles in when you choose to speak. This isn't a coincidence. It's the natural result of someone who has decided to stop hiding behind excuses and start shining with authenticity. The most liberating truth that emerges from this journey is the discovery that you never had to be different to be respected. You always had everything you needed. The scars you tried to hide are maps of wisdom. The wrinkles you mourned are evidence of genuine smiles and transformative tears. The years you thought were lost are actually your greatest qualification to speak about the complexity of human existence. When this realization sinks deep into your consciousness, when you truly embrace the magnitude of the journey you have traveled, something extraordinary happens. You stop trying to be who others want you to be and start celebrating who you really are. And this internal celebration becomes a magnetic force that transforms every environment you walk into. But here's the secret that can take this transformation to even deeper levels. Every time you use these three phrases, you're not just changing how you're perceived, you're helping other women around you discover that they too can speak with authority. that they too can set boundaries, that they too can disagree unapologetically. There's a quiet responsibility to being a woman who chooses to shine after 60. You become a mirror for other women who are still stuck in patterns of invisibility and self-deprecation. Your courage becomes permission for them too, to find their own voices, their own boundaries, their own authority. This is how real revolutions happen, not through grandiose manifestos, but through courageous women deciding, one conversation at a time, to rewrite the rules about what it means to age with dignity and power. The echoes of these words will continue to reverberate long after this video ends, long after you close this screen, long after the memory of these phrases has settled into your subconscious mind. Because what you really discovered today were not just 3 ways of speaking. They were 3 portals to a version of yourself that has always existed, but perhaps has been lying dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. That moment is now. Every next conversation is an opportunity to practice. Every next encounter is a chance to demonstrate that smart women over 60 don't ask for permission. They grant permission for the world to witness their greatness. If these words touch something deep within you, if you recognize parts of your story on this journey, if you felt a spark of courage being ignited, then don't let that energy dissipate into silence. Like this video so that other women can find it when they need this message most. Share it with those you know are ready to awaken their own authority. Let me know in the comments which of these 3 quotes resonates most deeply with your experience, because your story might be exactly what another woman needs to hear to take the first step toward her own transformation. And subscribe to the channel, because this conversation about authentic female empowerment is just beginning, and you deserve to be there for every revelation yet to come.